8 years ago, Luis confessed his love to me, promising he'd love me for the rest of his life. 8 years later, he got my best friend pregnant, siphoned off my family's assets, and told me, "Let's get divorced. There's 100,000 left in the account. You can have it all." When I opened my eyes again, I was back in my school days. That year, I was 18, burning bright like the midsummer sun, the beloved princess of my family. Luis was still the poor, charming heartthrob of the school. Veronica was still pretending to be pitiful. And that dark, brooding boy who secretly liked me, Oliver Lee, the illegitimate son of the Lee family, had not yet taken his own life after relentless bullying. I had another chance to start over. Chapter 1. Let's get divorced. There's 100,000 left in the account. You can have it all. After 8 years of being together and 3 years of marriage, the man I loved most said those words to me with a cold, expressionless face. Luis and I were high school classmates. He was the poor but handsome campus idol. I was a spoiled rich girl. I'd had a crush on him since high school. And the night after our final exam, under the stars, he confessed, "Freya, be with me." My heart pounded with joy. Blushing, I looked at him, and just like that, we became a couple. By our 5th year together, my dad finally gave his blessing for us to marry. He said, "Freya, my health has been failing these years. I'm handing the company over to the two of you, along with the cash flow." Then, at the start of the year, Dad passed away. Luis got busier and busier, eventually not even coming home at night. A month ago, the company Dad left us went bankrupt. Luis said that after everything was liquidated, only 100,000 was left, and he'd give it all to me. "Just sign the papers, Freya." I stared at the unfamiliar face of Luis, unable to reconcile it with the man who had once loved me so dearly that others envied us. He used to give me massages at night, hold me in the mornings, and never left the house without kissing me goodbye. But now, that sharply defined face was cold, distant. "Are you done, Luis?" A familiar voice broke the silence. Veronica walked in. She had been my best friend since our first year of high school. We were inseparable. She'd always claimed to be single. Her lower belly was slightly swollen. I was stunned. "Veronica, you're..." She held her belly, stepping behind Luis with a frightened, fragile look. "I'm sorry, Freya. It's Luis's child." I told him not to rush things, but he just couldn't wait. "I didn't mean for this to happen. He just loves me so much." He couldn't help himself every night. With that kind of frequency, it was bound to happen. My heart went cold as I stared at Luis. He frowned, meeting my eyes filled with bitter disappointment. He didn't look happy, if anything. He looked irritated. He said to Veronica, "Go wait outside. Don't stress the baby." Veronica reluctantly left. As the door closed, she flashed me a triumphant smile. I turned to Luis. "So this is what it's come to. I get it now. My family didn't go bankrupt. You drained it dry and moved the money. Didn't you?" Luis said nothing. I laughed as tears welled in my eyes. "So the 8 years we had, all a lie. Luis, you never loved me." He clenched his fists, staying silent. As I collapsed backward, Luis rushed to catch me, but I shoved him away. Eyes red, he called out to me, "Freya, don't call my name. It disgusts me. I used to think I was the happiest person in the world. My mom died young, and Dad raised me alone, cherishing me. Later, I had you by my side, protecting me. Turns out, it was all a setup, Luis. These past 8 years with you were a nightmare. If I ever get another chance to live again, I hope you meet a terrible end. You and Veronica, scum like you, deserve to suffer the consequences." A sharp pain struck the back of my head, and my consciousness began to fade. Luis shouted, "Freya!" Chapter 2. Freya? Freya? I slowly opened my eyes and found myself lying on the lawn, clutching a phone in my hand. From the other end, someone was calling my name, his voice unfamiliar, yet hauntingly familiar. "Freya, where are you now? Is it low blood sugar again? Did you faint? Daddy's coming to get you right now." It was my dad's voice, urgent and anxious. Dad. But Dad had already passed away. How could he possibly be calling me? I sat up, rubbing the pain at the back of my head, and realized I was wearing a school uniform skirt, a stretch of pale leg exposed to the breeze. From a nearby alley, I heard the sound of fists landing and feet kicking. Kneel down and beg. Maybe then I'll let you go. Oliver, you dirty bastard. You think trash like you belongs in our elite school? Without thinking, I rushed toward the noise. What the hell are you doing? Oliver was thinly dressed. The corners of his eyes reddened and full of rage. He suddenly looked up at me, something fierce and turbulent in his gaze. I looked at his face and recalled someone buried deep in my memory. Oliver Lee, the illegitimate son of my father's close friend. Mr. Lee, word was. Mr. Lee had tricked Oliver's mother into marriage years ago. Then she died in a car crash, and Oliver was brought into the Lee family. Mr. Lee's wife was ruthless. In the end, she had him tormented to death. He died in his sophomore year of college. Not long after his death, I received an anonymous letter. Inside the envelope was a bank card and a slip of paper with a string of numbers, 1310143. When I looked into it, I found the account belonged to Oliver. The card held all the savings from his short and miserable life. So where was I now? Did I really go back to the past? Lost in thought, one of the thugs dragged me forward. Well, look who showed up, a little heroine coming to save her prince. They reached toward me, but Oliver suddenly snapped like a switch had been flipped. Get lost. Don't touch her. And just like that, the beatings began again. Last time, I hadn't gotten close. I ran off, and the last thing I saw was Oliver curled up on the ground, every punch landing like a hammer on flesh. But this time, he stood in front of me like a wolf defending its territory, his eyes burning with the will to survive. The scene shifted from a one-sided beating to an actual fight. He shielded me. I shouted with all my strength. I'm Freya. I'm kind of a big deal at this school. My dad spoils me like a princess. Go ask around if you don't believe me. I'm telling you, if you touch me today, my dad will destroy you. Sure enough, their expressions changed. They took a good look at me. *T. It really is Freya. Oliver. Lucky you. Someone's got your back today. They scattered, leaving a mess behind. Oliver braced himself, body bruised and battered, and said, "You shouldn't have helped me, Freya." Chapter 3. I didn't plan to cry, but the realization that I was really back, that I had a second chance, brought tears to my eyes. Seeing me cry, he stiffened. Crying? You're such a softie. Even if I'm soft, I still saved you. I shot back. 10 minutes later, my dad came waddling over with his slightly overweight figure, huffing and puffing, followed by our out-of-shape driver, Martin. Freya, Dad. He looked me over, then glanced at Oliver, drenched, bruised, bleeding. What happened to you two? I cut in before Oliver could speak. Dad. Someone tried to mess with me. He saved me. Oliver stared at me in disbelief. In the past, I hadn't treated him all that well. I helped him once, and then barely spoke to him for the next 2 years. He was quiet, antisocial, and I was always afraid Luis would get the wrong idea. But now, thinking of that letter I received after he died, I just wanted to save him. I had so many questions. How exactly did he die in that other life? What did those numbers mean? I didn't avoid his eyes. I looked up and met his gaze. Oliver clenched his fists, his ears turning red. His reaction reminded me of something from before. Once, I saw him in a fight. Some guys had stolen from him, and he exploded in that narrow space. His roar had startled everyone. In the scuffle, someone threw a pen to the ground. Only then did I realize he had been protecting the pen I'd casually given him the day we first met. The pen landed at my feet. He rushed to pick it up, then slowly raised his head and saw me. At that moment, his fury and humiliation were fully exposed in front of me. The next time I heard about him was the news of his death. In the car, my dad asked Oliver, "Want me to drop you off at home?" "No, don't." I quickly cut in. "He's coming home with us." "Dad, huh?" "Oliver, huh?" My dad had known Oliver wasn't living well. He'd once wanted to take in the son of an old friend, but I had opposed it. I even protested in front of Oliver, saying he was leeching off my family. My sudden change shocked them both, especially Oliver. Once home, he said nothing, wiping the blood from his face with the back of his hand. I rushed off to get a towel. "Use this." Once Dad left, Oliver looked at me and quietly asked, "You're helping me like this?" Aren't you afraid I'll cling to you? Chapter 4. So what if he clings to me? Could he possibly be more ruthless and calculating than Luis? Besides, someone who had known me since middle school, who left me his only life savings even after death, how bad could he really be? I arranged for Oliver to stay in the room next to mine and purposely walked past his door before bed. Through the door, I asked, Oliver, 1310143, what do you think that means? Suddenly, the door swung open. Freya, why are you helping me? His voice was low, guarded, intense. In his eyes, I saw the weight he had silently carried in his youth, the kind of emotion that couldn't be voiced easily. It was secret affection, hidden away like a treasure, the admiration of someone reaching for a star, laced with self-doubt and yearning. My heart tightened. I blamed myself for being so blind all those years, and for not reaching out when he needed it most. Freya, he said again. I snapped out of my thoughts. Huh? Answer me. His gaze burned, like a wolf's, feral and intense. Feeling slightly awkward, I said, well, you saved me today, and since life at the Lee household sucks anyway, why not just stay here? I couldn't exactly say. You're going to die in a couple of years, and I've come back from the future to save you. And besides, someone's going to try to cling to me soon. Keeping you nearby means you can help fend them off. Deal? He said nothing. I grinned at him. Think of it as my way of returning the favor for today. My smile caught him off guard. He froze for a second. He was so tall, standing under the light. The glow fell across his thick lashes, casting shadows over his sharp features. His breath lightly brushed across my face. Okay. Chapter 5. The next morning, Dad insisted on driving me to school. Martin was behind the wheel, Dad in the passenger seat. Every so often, he glanced back at Oliver and me, an unreadable expression on his face. I knew what he was thinking. The way I had suddenly changed, welcoming Oliver into our home. Dad probably wondered if I'd been possessed. Softly, I said, Dad, he can protect me. Oh, okay. Then, Dad remembered what happened last night and gave Oliver a worried look. As Oliver got out of the car, he glanced at my dad and said quietly, Don't worry, Uncle. Then, as if that wasn't enough, he added in a low voice, If something happens, I'll stand in front of her. My dad finally let out a long sigh. All right. Then, me. As we walked into school, people started staring. Oliver was walking beside me. After all, suddenly, someone rushed up behind us. Freya! Veronica came trotting over, linking her arm with mine like we were besties. What are you doing going to class with him? She asked, her tone laced with unease. I glanced at her, then gently removed her hand from my arm. Her expression shifted instantly, transforming into something frail and pitiful. Freya, I would never forget. 8 years later, she had stood behind Luis, proudly telling me how he couldn't resist touching her every night, how he was too eager to get her pregnant. I snapped at her. Don't touch me, Freya? Veronica looked absolutely stunned. Oliver noticed my reaction. He lowered his eyes and shifted positions, walking on my other side to quietly separate her from me. I finally felt like I could breathe again. That wave of emotional chaos gradually settled. I told myself silently, no rush. Then I changed my tone, sounding more wronged than Veronica. I'm sorry, Veronica. I didn't mean to snap. I just didn't sleep well last night. And what you said earlier, it was really out of line. Veronica froze, clearly caught off guard, then quickly switched to her pitiful act again. She was trying to draw attention, to make others see me as the spoiled brat. But how could I possibly let her succeed? To deal with a pretentious coquette, you have to be even more pretentious than the coquette. I looked hurt and asked, Oliver is our classmate and the son of my dad's close friend. As my desk mate, how can you be so shallow? You were practically dripping with contempt. Veronica, you're putting me in a really difficult position. Her expression cracked. She couldn't even hold her fake smile anymore. Her nose turned red as she looked at me, completely flustered. Seeing that I wasn't about to help her out of this, she muttered a half-hearted sorry and scurried away. After she left, I looked up and saw Oliver watching me curiously. Why did you say all that just now? He suddenly asked. Freya, was it because you hate her? Or because you wanted to protect me? Chapter 6. Oliver's voice was low and magnetic. And for a moment, my heartbeat lost its rhythm. I thought about how he would die not long from now. And after a pause, I took a deep breath and said, "Because I want to protect you." Oliver was slightly stunned. He looked away. Liar. I'm not lying, Oliver. That reflexive reaction of his, he couldn't hide it. Veronica bullied me, and he protected me, so if others judged or wronged him, I'd stand up for him. Besides, if I didn't stir the waters, how would Veronica show her true colors? Sure enough, after the first class, I saw Veronica sneaking out. I quietly followed her, and ended up catching her with Luis in a secluded lab. As soon as Luis saw her, he asked, "Veronica?" It was my first time seeing them together in private. In my memory, Veronica was always timid, delicate, and shy around men, especially Luis. Back in those years, she barely spoke to him unless I was present. I had to practically beg her to add Luis on WeChat back then. She said, "Freya, it's not appropriate. He's your boyfriend." I told her, "You're my best friend, that's why I want you to add him." She had looked so reluctant, so bashful, and even saved his name in her phone as Freya's boyfriend, right in front of me. But now, with no one around, she was the one actively throwing herself into Luis's arms. Her chest brushed against him so casually, as she whined and clung to him like a spoiled girl. 18-year-old Luis had already grown tall, 6 feet 2 inches, handsome beyond reason, full of sunshine and boyish charm. The wind tousled his hair, casting a soft shadow across his eyes. I thought Luis would hold her, but instead, his body went stiff. Then, he shoved Veronica away. Veronica clearly didn't expect that. Luis looked a little pale. He took 2 steps back and rubbed his forehead. "Wait, give me a second." His voice, carried by the breeze, reached me, strangely familiar. The Luis of high school had a youthful, clear tone, brighter than it was deep. The Luis from later years, after marrying me and running my father's company, spoke like someone in charge, firm, decisive, with quiet dominance. I had been by his side for 8 years. From teenager to CEO, I knew every change in him. I froze on the spot. More shocking than seeing Veronica throw herself at him in high school was this terrifying realization. Chapter 7. If I was able to come back, what about him? Before I could think it through, Luis's next actions confirmed my suspicion. He looked at the still young Veronica and asked, "What year is this? Why are you dressed like that?" His eyes lingered on Veronica's flat stomach. Veronica blushed under his stare and mumbled, "Luis, it's between classes. What's with you?" "This outfit. Freya bought it for me. It cost 3,000. Doesn't it look nice?" When she mentioned my name, Luis's brows furrowed even deeper. He clutched his head, took a long time to steady himself, then finally said, "I get it now." And then, he smiled. "So that's what this is." I get it. He turned to leave, but Veronica grabbed his arm. "Luis, what's wrong? Are you sick?" But Luis didn't even glance at her. Instead, he asked urgently, "Where's Freya?" "FRE," Veronica echoed. "Hurt. Why are you calling her that way?" "Luis, I told you, we need to move faster with the plan. Freya's being weird today. She actually yelled at me. She embarrassed me in public. And she's getting close to that weirdo Oliver. If she ends up with Oliver, you're out of the picture. We need to stick to the plan. You chase her. Get her to fall for you, and figure out how to access her family's wealth. Then your family's debt and mine will both be covered." Luis seemed to be deep in thought, but Veronica kept talking. "School will keep costing money. Luis, she's an only child. If you can win her over, her whole inheritance is practically ours. That's way better than working a regular job in the future. I already mentioned you to her. She's interested. You need to get closer to her. Fast. She's only 18 right now, so pure. We need to seize this opportunity." Luis muttered to himself. "Yeah, she really is still that innocent right now." As he spoke, his eyes turned red. Chapter 8. I couldn't listen any longer. I had already guessed the truth, but hearing it with my own ears was another kind of pain. To think that my youth, my innocent, Trusting 18-year-old self was considered the perfect opportunity to be taken advantage of. When I thought about those 8 years I spent with Luis, it felt like nothing but a nightmare. I turned and left in anger, only to run into Oliver around the corner, caught red-handed eavesdropping. I tried to play it off. What a coincidence. Oliver's lips pressed into a thin line. Not really. He shoved his hands into his pockets and gave me a look, then glanced toward the corner I had just been peeking from. He could still see Luis and Veronica in the distance. His eyes lingered on Luis, then shifted back to me, as if seeing straight through my emotional turmoil. He frowned slightly. Wait for me after class. I'll walk with you. A sudden sense of security washed over me. When school let out, our driver Martin was already waiting at the gate. After what happened yesterday, Martin had come early to make sure I was safe. Now, seeing me walk out side by side with Oliver, he blushed like he was watching a scene out of a teen drama. I grinned and teased. Martin, don't we look good together? The classic campus beauty and school heartthrob? Cough, cough, cough. Martin almost choked on his own breath. As I got ready to get in the car, someone called out behind me, Freya! I turned to see Luis, backpack slung over his shoulder, running toward me in scuffed white sneakers. Once, I adored the way he used to look at me like that, with affection, admiration, and warmth. Now, seeing that same gaze laced with regret made my skin crawl. I didn't even slow down. I stepped directly into my family's black Benz. To hell with the poor boy aesthetic. Right in front of Luis, I deliberately turned to Oliver and said, Come on, let's go home together. Luis stood frozen, watching me ignore him completely as I smiled at Oliver. His jaw tightened, his expression sour. Freya. I tilted my head innocently. Classmate? Chapter 9. 5 years in love, 3 years of marriage. Now, after betrayal, we meet again, 2 young bodies, but each carrying a fully grown soul. He thought I was still the naive, 18-year-old Freya. He probably regretted it all now, thinking he'd been given a second chance. But how could I possibly give him that? Not only would I never give him another chance, I'd make sure he watched helplessly as he lost everything. Without my family, did he really think he'd still become that successful future version of Luis? Did you want something? I asked calmly. Despite the cold contempt in my chest, my face showed nothing but pleasant curiosity. Hello? Do you need something? I asked again. Luis flinched slightly, his eyes chaotic, swirling with turbulent emotion. In that long stare, I felt a chill creep over my skin. Heat rushed to my head. The bitterness and resentment in me threatened to burst free, but I held it down. Just as I was about to lose control, a hand landed gently on my shoulder. The touch grounded me, snapped me out of the downward spiral. Oliver looked at me. Let's go. Didn't you say we're going home together? I nodded and gave him a bright smile. Right, you still have to come to my room tonight to tutor me. Tutor you? He almost broke character, awkwardly looking away. I nodded again, playing along. To my surprise, he didn't call me out. Instead, he reached out and ruffled my hair, and I let him. Where people stand, who's close, and who's not, it's always painfully obvious. Luis stood frozen, while I waved him off like just another classmate. Martin, sensing my growing impatience, started the car quickly. In the rearview mirror, Luis's figure grew smaller and smaller, pitiful even in retreat. Oliver didn't say a word the whole way. That night, I stayed in my room for a long time. Eventually, I noticed Oliver was still sitting in the second-floor living room. It seemed like he was waiting. When he heard me open the door, he stood up. As I walked closer, I realized just how tall he was. Though slim, he towered over Luis. His features were sharp, striking. His bangs were too long, hiding his eyes, like he was deliberately concealing how handsome he actually was. I suddenly remembered something Dad once said. Oliver looked a lot like his late mother. She had been too beautiful, and that was exactly why Oliver's father tricked her into marriage. I didn't agree with what Uncle Lee had done, but as someone from the younger generation, it wasn't my place to judge. I called out, Oliver. Yeah? Did you want something? He looked at me sharply, like he was accusing me of being a liar. Tutoring. I was caught off guard and gave a couple of dry laughs. That had just been an excuse to get rid of Luis. I was terrible at studying. Real tutoring would probably kill me. After we got married, I didn't know whether Luis had done it intentionally or not, but he'd pampered me into a spoiled mess. I couldn't even memorize the periodic table. Art, though, I was pretty good at that. Trying to brush it off, I smiled at him. I'm a little tired today. Can we start tomorrow instead? Oliver didn't push. He stood and turned to leave, only pausing briefly as he passed me. Oliver always kept his feelings buried deep, so deep that if you didn't look closely, you'd never notice. He was like that with everything. Distant, cold, unreachable. Even love, as vast and deep as the sea, he kept it hidden under calm waves. That night, I had a dream. In it, Luis was strangling me. Veronica lay in my bed, striking seductive poses like she owned the place. She said, "Freya, everything that was yours now belongs to me." Desperate, I smiled and vowed revenge. I broke free, and without hesitation, leapt from the window. That sudden feeling of falling, like gravity had snapped, it was as if my whole soul had been torn apart. The pain was too real. I couldn't stop the nausea. I stumbled into the bathroom and vomited violently. When I finally looked up, my reflection in the mirror was a wreck, miserable and hollow. Coming back to life, knowing the truth. I thought I'd be obsessed with revenge, but after reliving it in my dreams, I realized something. The most pathetic thing isn't the pain. It's being trapped in that pain forever, bound to people who don't deserve a single second more of your life. All I wanted now was to never have anything to do with them again. Chapter 10. At 3 in the morning, I hugged my pillow and went to knock on Oliver's door. "Oliver, are you asleep?" A few minutes later, the door opened. When Oliver saw me, he froze. He instinctively grabbed the doorframe. I didn't wait. I slipped inside and headed straight for his bed. "Freya?" It was so quiet around us that I could hear the frantic beating of his heart loud and clear. His voice was low and hoarse. "What are you doing?" "I'm scared." Oliver stood there in the dark, completely at a loss. It was the kind of scene that could easily be misinterpreted. Just 2 days ago, I'd saved him, and now, I was climbing into his bed. Who wouldn't think something was going on? But in this life, the only people who gave me a true sense of safety were Dad and him. "You said you'd stand in front of me if anything happened," I reminded him. Oliver's breathing quickened. "Get out." "I won't." I couldn't tell him what I was really afraid of, so I said I had a nightmare. "Seriously, Oliver, I'm weak and fragile and easy to push over. I'm no match for you. Don't be afraid I'll do anything to you in the middle of the night." "Oliver, I just want to borrow your bed for a bit. Promise I won't do anything." When he wasn't paying attention, I dove under his covers. His pillows and blanket were freshly prepared from the day before. Clean and full of his cool, crisp scent, everything about it felt safe. In the middle of the night, Oliver looked down at me lying in his bed, caught in a situation where he could neither move forward nor back. A brooding, guarded boy, completely undone by one reckless, sunshiny girl. Eventually, he sighed, helpless. "Freya." He looked like he wanted to say something, but in the end, he swallowed the words. Finally, he gave up resisting. His voice was dry. "Then fine, but you have class tomorrow. I'll go sleep outside." "Don't go." I grabbed his sleeve. Oliver was totally defeated by me. His voice held a rare softness, one that was almost indulgent. "I'll sit at the end of the bed and keep you company, Oliver, once I fall asleep. Don't leave." "I'm still scared." He answered vaguely. If I hadn't felt his whole body tense up, I might have believed him. I'd already stolen his bed. Now I was making him sit and watch me sleep. How shameless was I? Softly, I offered. "You can sleep here too. You know." Oliver's breath hitched. "Freya, do you even know what you're saying?" "I do." We were both 18. I wasn't some clueless little girl. And honestly, after living through most of a lifetime already, if I still let myself get tripped up over tiny rules and etiquette, what would be the point? Oliver's bed was warm. After a long night of stress, I was at my limit. I reached out and pulled him down beside me. Caught off guard, Oliver toppled onto the mattress next to me. The moonlight fell through the window, casting silver across the bridge of his nose. His eyes were glowing, dark as deep water, and just like that, my heartbeat skipped a beat. Chapter 11. At some point, I fell asleep, half asleep. I felt Oliver get up and stubbornly sit at the edge of the bed, keeping watch over me the entire night. In this life, I may have grown up in a single-parent home, but Dad had always treated me like the most precious thing in the world. And even Oliver, someone I barely knew in the last life, was carefully, quietly watching over me now. The way he stayed by my side, it was like he was guarding a gem in the palm of his hand. The next morning, as we went downstairs for breakfast, I walked ahead, and Oliver followed behind me. Dad saw us getting along and smiled brightly. Then he saw the dark circles under Oliver's eyes, and his smile started to look a little suspicious. "My daughter," he said, voice full of meaning, probably about to ask if I'd bullied Oliver again. I cut him off before he could say more and got straight to the point. "Dad, I remember a while ago. I asked you for some money, didn't I?" "That's right. You asked me to sponsor 2 students under the company's name. In my previous life, I had asked Dad to secretly support Veronica and Luis through one of our company's branches to protect their pride. I even told him to make it look natural. Dad ended up setting up a scholarship award using those funds. It was practically rigged behind the scenes so that Veronica and Luis would win. Later, when Veronica didn't get into college, she used that fake award in a connection with one of my uncles to get a special admission into a university. Looking back, Veronica's prestigious degree all came from a good deed I did in secret. I asked Dad, "What's the status of that now?" Dad smiled. "Already in progress. The company contacted the 2 students. The award is confirmed, and the money's about to be transferred." He added, "Why? My Freya has another idea?" Thinking about how Dad died mysteriously in the last life, I gave a cold smile. "Dad, don't transfer it." Dad looked confused. I told him I'd thought it over seriously last night, and it was better to donate the money elsewhere. These 2 students' work doesn't deserve such a large award. 200,000 yuan is no small sum. There are people in this world who need it more, like those struggling with illness. Let's use the money to save lives. Dad grew thoughtful. "You're right. My mother had passed away due to illness." That struck a chord with him. He said, "Those 2 kids still have living parents. They don't exactly meet my criteria either. I was only going to help them because you asked." Freya. My heart ached a little. Dad's love for me had always been unconditional, but some people would always find a way to take advantage of that unconditional love. Chapter 12. When I arrived at school, Veronica had already received the notice that her scholarship had been revoked. The judging panel added a final review round, and she was eliminated. She looked at me with teary eyes. Freya. She'd always known the award was just a cover for my family's donation. She only pretended she didn't. Now she couldn't pretend anymore. She slipped up and brought it up herself. I got disqualified. I feigned confusion. Disqualified from what? The National College Student Research Competition. Gotta admit, my dad really did pick a pretty impressive sounding name for that. I suppressed my disgust and patted her shoulder. "Don't worry, Veronica. There's always next time. Keep your chin up," Veronica said. "You know my dad's a gambler. My mom's working odd jobs to pay his debts. He just borrowed money again." I already told them I'd won the award. They promised the debt collectors they'd pay by the end of the month. Whatever she remembered next drained all the color from her face. "Freya, if we can't pay, my family's done for." "Oh no. What should we do?" I asked. All concerned. "I really want to help you, but I spent too much money last month. My dad got mad and froze all my cards just yesterday." "Do you have any money? Could you lend me a bit?" She looked at me, dumbfounded. I smiled awkwardly. "I'm seriously out of cash. You know I can't control my spending. I even gave you 3,000 yuan last week. You're usually really thrifty, so you probably haven't used it all yet, right? Can I get it back?" "Freya. I'm sorry. I already gave the money to my parents. I don't have anything left to repay you." "Oh, no worries. No worries. Just remember to pay me back when you've got money again. We're besties after all." After that, Veronica never dared to bring up the word money with me again, for fear I'd actually come after her for repayment. Since she couldn't get money from me, she had no choice but to run to Luis. As expected, I soon saw her sneaking off again. She was panicking now, going to Luis more and more frequently, not even bothering to keep up appearances. One afternoon, Veronica rushed off after class, claiming she had to leave early. In reality, she went to Luis's classroom to wait for him. Luis had been unusually quiet all week, like he was trying to figure out why this life was playing out so differently. And that silence naturally led to him distancing himself from Veronica. She thought he was hesitating, so she stormed into his classroom when everyone else had left. She confronted him with red-rimmed eyes. "Luis, I know you don't like Freya. You think she's spoiled, loud, and reckless, but we can't wait any longer. If my dad can't pay off his debt, they'll take me to settle it instead. We grew up together. You were my first. I even approached Freya on purpose for you to live a better life. Do you know what people say about me? They laugh and call me her little sidekick. You think I don't have dignity? Everything I've done, I did it for you. So even if you don't love her, can't you be with her for my sake?" Luis's hand froze on his pen. "I love her. What?" I said. "I love her." Veronica thought she'd misheard. She completely lost it. "What did you just say, Luis? What the hell are you talking about?" Luis's voice was hoarse, and he let out a bitter smile. "You heard me, Veronica. Do you know why I haven't come to see you this week? I've been wondering if what I felt all along was ever even real. I'd only followed them to see how the two snakes would turn on each other this lifetime. But instead, I heard that. A wave of bleakness swept over me. What was the point? I'd already died once. Life had been reset. And now he was saying he loved me? If you loved me, why didn't you cherish me when you had me? If you loved me, why did you get Veronica pregnant? You emptied my assets, divorced me. Is that what love looks like?" This wasn't 18-year-old Luis anymore. This was the Luis who had spent 8 years with me, shared a grand wedding, and the most intimate moments of a marriage. To be standing here, telling this kind of story to a naive, young Veronica, that love of his, it was laughably late, pathetically late. Veronica clearly snapped too, crying. She screamed, "Luis, you're my boyfriend. How could you say you love Freya? She's my friend." Luis's gaze was ice cold. "Then why did you tell me to chase your friend?" "That's different. Freya has everything. And I only have you." Veronica's voice weakened. "I just wanted you to help me. Just take a little something from her." Realizing Luis was in a bad mood, she tried to comfort him, playing Pitiful again, making the scene more and more suggestive. She did everything she could to win him back, innocent looks, pleading eyes, sweet voice, and Luis, still a man, and with history between them, started to waver. I could see it in his eyes. They were changing. I couldn't hold it in anymore and burst out laughing. It was just too ridiculous. I turned to leave but accidentally stepped on something at the corner, a discarded yogurt drink bottle. It made a loud noise. "Who's there?" Luis asked. Chapter 13. Right at that moment, a hand grabbed mine from behind. As Luis and Veronica rushed out, hastily fixing their clothes, Oliver pulled me toward the rooftop stairs. We ran, step by step, hand in hand. His grip was tight, warm. The wind rushing past my ears reminded me of what had just happened. "Was it you too?" Luis was catching up. He pushed open the metal door with Veronica close behind. Panting, Oliver's dark eyes locked onto mine, emotions stirring in their depths. I didn't know how much he'd heard. Had he heard Veronica plotting to use me? While I was still trying to piece things together, Oliver suddenly pulled me into his arms. He shifted me to the side, shielding me completely from view. Luis stepped onto the rooftop. Veronica followed, breathless. Luis frowned. "Were you the one eavesdropping?" Oliver didn't move. Luis grew suspicious and approached, clearly worried about the rumors this might stir. He was trying to protect Veronica's image. But the moment he recognized Oliver, he paused. Then his gaze found me. "Freya?" Luis asked, voice rough. I tugged Oliver's sleeve. He turned, glaring at Luis, and suddenly hugged me tight. Luis's eyes instantly turned red. "Let go! What are you doing to her?" Oliver said coldly. "Can't you see?" Veronica gasped. "Freya, you and Oliver." I covered my face dramatically, pausing for effect. "We were just doing something very proper up here for the past half hour." Then I looked at them curiously. "What about you two? You know each other?" Veronica's face turned white. And no, we don't. Of course she wouldn't admit it now. She was guilty as hell, and too afraid to press further. She glanced nervously at Luis, who was clenching his fists. Luis said stiffly, "Freya, you know the school prohibits relationships." I couldn't help but laugh. "Excuse me, classmate, we were talking about alone." Actually, that line matched perfectly with what I'd told Veronica earlier that morning. She silently breathed a sigh of relief. After Luis and Veronica left, Oliver still hadn't let go of my hand. Only when I gently pulled away did he speak. "Freya, does that count as me protecting you again?" Chapter 14. Two major things happened over the next week. First, since Veronica and Luis lost the scholarship, both families were unable to repay their debts. Their homes were smashed up by debt collectors. Veronica was nearly assaulted. She fought like hell to protect herself. Luis, meanwhile, took a beating trying to defend his mother. The two of them had grown up together since childhood. Both had fathers who were gambling addicts. Same kind of broken families. Same kind of pain. It was no wonder their bond was so deep. Now I understood why Veronica had never worried about me stealing Luis from her. She had always been certain she was the one he truly loved. And I was just a stepping stone, his ticket to success. The second big event was that Oliver was bullied again. Since my relationship with him had gotten closer, Luis secretly fanned the flames. Some school thugs cornered Oliver in an alley again. They mocked him, saying he was a toad lusting after a swan, that he was clinging to me like a joke. What can you give Freya? Lately, because Martin had been driving both me and Oliver every day, they had gotten a bit closer. Oliver didn't talk much, but he was polite. He never looked down on Martin for being a driver. So Martin grew fond of him in return. The day Oliver ran into trouble, I happened to be homesick with the flu, so he was alone. It was Martin who helped him out. Martin told me in secret, before I could go check on Oliver. He came knocking on my door first. There was a bruise under his eye. Before saying anything, he checked my forehead to make sure my fever had gone down. Then he said, "Freya, can you lend me some money?" "What for?" "Business." Oliver wanted to start a business? This life really was turning out differently. Chapter 15. I lent Oliver all the pocket money I'd saved over the years. In my last life, I used that same money to help Luis pay for college. He never paid me back, not even after we got married. Once we were family, it was forgotten completely. This time, I invested it in Oliver instead. Luis could fend for himself. There was still over a year before Oliver was supposed to die. I wanted to change the ending this time. The college entrance exams were approaching fast. Veronica and Luis were both studying hard, while Oliver, whose grades were already excellent, started focusing on his startup. I didn't know what he was working on until the night before exams. On May 19th, when Oliver asked me out for a late-night snack, I put on a pale yellow dress and tied my hair up in a princess braid. When we got to the night market, 6 good-looking boys greeted me in perfect sync with big grins, shouting, "Hi, sis-in-law." Oliver smiled, walked over, and lightly smacked the shoulder of the guy leading the group. That only made them more excited. "Come on, bro, don't be so protective." One of them laughed. Oliver muttered, "Cut it out." Yes, sis-in-law." Oliver said we can't joke around. They chimed in. That's when I finally realized Oliver had used the money to start an esports gaming company. The 6 boys in front of me were the first batch of professional players he'd signed. Halfway through our snack, I went to the bathroom. On my way, I passed the back of a convenience store and spotted Luis. In the midst of a glowing city, when he should have been home cramming for the biggest exam of his life, Luis was working. He wore a worn tank top, drenched in sweat, hauling crates of beer onto his shoulders. The effort made his muscles pop, his veins visible along his neck. He saw me and froze. I stood there, unmoving. So did he, until one of his coworkers called out, "Luis!" He finally looked away, clenched his jaw, and resumed lifting boxes. Since that day on the rooftop, he hadn't come to see me, nor had he followed through on Veronica's plan to pursue me and cheat my family out of money. Instead, he chose to work, to make his own way. Luis finished moving the crates. then came back out for another load. He accidentally scraped his arm, blood streaked down in a long gash. When he finished, the boss handed him 80 yuan. Freya? A familiar voice spoke behind me. I hadn't heard the first call, so he repeated it. Freya. I turned to find Oliver. He must have come looking for me after noticing I was gone too long. Over these past few months, he'd helped me with my studies, and even pitched in with Dad's work, his way of paying back for staying with us. I'd told him to use my nickname ages ago, but this was the first time he ever called me Freya like that. I forgot to answer for a second. He followed my gaze and saw Luis. Luis was bent over, signing the receipt. Oliver asked me, feeling sorry for him? I shook my head. This is how it should be. His family was poor to begin with. Relying on himself was the right path. Everyone should be responsible for their own life. Those who abandon their morals for gain, they're the ones who should be ashamed, after living a whole extra life. Luis was finally starting to act like a man. Chapter 16. Back at the night market stall, one of the curly-haired boys from the esports team ordered some beer. Everyone was in high spirits, and I had a little myself. By the time Oliver and I got home, both of us were slightly tipsy. We didn't head into our rooms. Instead, we stood side by side on the balcony, chatting. We watched the stars together. I asked him, Oliver, do you like stars or the moon more? He said, the moon. Why? Oliver hesitated. He looked at me for a long time, long enough that I thought he wouldn't answer at all. But then, in a low voice, he said, because I have my own moonlight to protect. The flutter in my heart was almost overwhelming. In the past, I'd been afraid of his gloominess and didn't like his aloof nature. But now that I'd lived again and gotten close to him, I finally understood it was all just his armor. No one chooses loneliness. No one wants to be shut out in the dark. In the last life, no one had ever loved him. That was all. But in this life, Oliver had been given another chance. After Dad took him in, Uncle Lee finally relaxed, and Oliver accepted our family's kindness. After months of living under the same roof, he'd started to open up. He was kind to both me and my dad. All those little acts of care hidden in the smallest things, they were priceless. We could all see the good in Oliver. More than that, I saw his effort to walk beside me. He got up early, stayed up late, and poured himself into his business. He even gave up sleep to help me with my studies, summarizing notes, organizing all my mistakes into a correction book, writing out every solution step by step. Whenever I needed him, he showed up, always there, always protecting me. I used to think love had to be fiery and grand, like the way Luis once confessed under the stars. But after Oliver, I realized true love is quieter. It's constant thoughtfulness. It's unreasonable favoritism. It's being looked down on by everyone, even by yourself, and still choosing to fight for someone. Fighting to become just a little more worthy, a little cleaner. That night, we sat together under the moonlight. He didn't talk about his feelings, and I didn't talk about mine, but I'd already seen my heart clearly, and I knew what I wanted. In this life, I wouldn't let past pain ruin my future. I would cut ties with Luis and Veronica and live as my true self. Chapter 17. But before I could start living for myself, Luis cornered me on May 20th. In China, May 20th is a day that symbolizes love. It sounds like I love you when spoken in Chinese. He handed me a branded box. What's this? A gift. 4/5/20ths. I can't accept this. We're not even close. Classmate. Luis pushed the box into my hands. His eyes were filled with a stubborn kind of obsession. Maybe it was the meaning of the day. Maybe it was just his way of trying to win me back. Whatever it was, he was determined. May 20th used to be our wedding anniversary. The day we registered our marriage, he took a phone call halfway through. Then he signed the papers with a stiff face and left immediately. I was too naive back then. My heart was full of love, and I didn't see the signs. Luis said, "Take it. I bought it with my own money." I looked at him, unsure what to say. Back then, he almost never used his money to buy me anything. Then again, everything he had came from my dad's hard-earned fortune. His eyes were full of hope, but after I refused again and again, that hope turned to irritation. Luis frowned. "Freya, stop being difficult." "Difficult?" I laughed. "You're Luis, right? I heard from Veronica, your mom's in the hospital for dialysis right now. Your family's in serious trouble, and you're out here buying me gifts? I'm not taking it. Luis froze, standing there all alone. Chapter 18. After saying goodbye to Luis, I also distanced myself from Veronica. When she couldn't get money out of me anymore, she quickly latched onto another little social circle. More than once, I overheard her casually dropping my name into conversations with other girls, leading them, subtly, to misunderstand or talk behind my back. But one girl in our class, who had a sharp radar for fake girls, finally snapped and clapped back. Veronica, enough. Freya was so good to you, and now you're out here talking trash behind her back with that smug attitude? Are you a pretentious coquette or what? This is low. Veronica's face turned all shades of green and white, completely losing whatever popularity she had left. She wanted to isolate me, but in the end, it backfired on her. 1 week before the college entrance exam, the entire class stopped talking to her. With all that bottled-up resentment, she crashed and burned, utterly failed the exam. When the scores came out, she hadn't even reached the lowest cutoff line. Veronica didn't get into college. Luis managed to maintain the scores he had in our previous life. Oliver scored in the top 3 of the entire city. And me? Thanks to being around them, my score was pulled up quite a bit too. I happily chose a university. On the day of registration, I saw both Luis and Oliver on campus. Without hesitation, I walked straight to Oliver's side. Time flew, and before I knew it, we were in sophomore year. Oliver's startup had caught the esports golden age and was making serious money. This lifetime, he was successful and no longer someone who would be bullied to death. As for me, I was living carefree, spending my time occasionally teasing Oliver. Finally, I asked him the question I'd been holding on to for over a year. Oliver. He had become much more composed this year. He looked at me curiously. That number, 1310143. What does it mean? Oliver's eyes widened, and then his face flushed red. Freya, who told you about that number? I waved him off. You first. Tell me, and then I'll tell you. No matter how I pressed him, he wouldn't say. We were more than just close friends, but still not quite lovers. Finally, even my roommate couldn't take it anymore. Freya, when are you and Oliver going to stop circling around each other and actually say something? Even soap operas don't drag it out this long. Our class is organizing a group camping trip soon, 2 days, 1 night, and we're allowed to bring guests. Why don't you invite Oliver to come? I laughed. No rush. No rush? Oliver is clearly just waiting for you to make the first move. Come on, Freya, take the lead for once. I grinned. All right, if everyone's expecting it, I'll invite him to the camping trip. On the day of the outdoor trip, there were more than 20 students from our class. Some brought boyfriends, some girlfriends, altogether 40 people packed into 2 minibuses and headed into the mountains. We rented a few forest cabins and a dozen stargazing tents. Oliver stayed by my side, carried my bags, and helped me pick a cabin. What I didn't expect was that Luis had also tagged along as someone's guest. The moment I saw him, I was briefly surprised, but then completely ignored him like he didn't exist. Suddenly, while I was picking up supplies at the camp center, I caught sight of a familiar figure. What is it? Oliver asked. I just saw Veronica. Chapter 19. I blinked, and she was gone. Veronica hadn't gotten into college. She had been in the real world for a while now. Maybe I saw wrong. That night, while I was staying alone in one of the forest cabins, I suddenly smelled something strange. Before I could react, everything went black. Midnight. Fire. Flames everywhere. I woke up from the scorching heat, unsure if I was dreaming or if this was real. The thick smoke burned my throat. I was in pain. Hallucinating. In my vision, I'd gone back in time, back when Luis and I were still together. As my boyfriend, he had come along on a similar camping trip with me and Veronica. Back then, Veronica and I shared a room, and there was also a fire. I clutched my head. It hurt so much. In the haze of pain, I saw Oliver rushing in to save me. Freya? Freya! My body wouldn't move. Someone had drugged me. The The same thing had happened in my last life. The experiences overlapped, blending dream and reality. In the vision, too, it was Oliver who saved me. That campsite was prone to wildfires, being so close to the forest. By the time people noticed the fire, not just the cabin, but the surrounding trees were all burning. Oliver had also been there in the previous life. He rushed into the flames for me, and in the end, he never came out. He handed me off to Luis. Luis carried me out, but Oliver was left behind in the blaze. Later, everyone said Oliver died from bullying. Even I believed it, but it wasn't true. Oliver had died saving me. In the chaos, my memories came flooding back. The flames curled upward, licking at the rooftop, and I remembered everything. The year Oliver died, I lost my memory from the trauma of this fire. The incident had caused 1 death and 2 injuries. Oliver was gone. Luis and I were injured. Since Luis had carried me out in the end, everyone assumed he was the one who saved me. Because of that, Dad completely changed his opinion of Luis and started to accept our relationship. Later, Dad even handed the company over to Luis, never suspecting anything was off. As for me, my trauma-induced amnesia made Dad pity me so much. He never let anyone mention the fire again. He said all I needed to do was recover. Luis, having taken credit for saving me, stayed quiet. He'd gained so much, of course he didn't want me to remember the truth. And in everyone's version of protecting me, I truly did forget. That fire, in the end, only Oliver was buried in it. No name, no recognition, no one cared. He died without a sound. When the fire reached my feet, everything clicked. And at that critical moment, the locked door burst open. Oliver rushed in. "Freya! You came," I sobbed. "I'm taking you out of here." He tried to help me up, but my body was limp and useless. So he scooped me into his arms. A burning beam crashed down and hit his lower leg. He gritted his teeth in pain, sweat beading on his forehead. I curled up in his arms, eyes red, staring at him. So foolish. In both lives, he was too foolish. This life, I was supposed to be the one saving him, but clearly, it was he who was saving me again, because I had told him earlier that I thought I saw Veronica. He had stayed more alert, and because of that, he arrived sooner than in the last life, before the fire had spread too far. This time, he made it in time. He was able to save me from the thick smoke and searing heat. My mind slowly cleared. I finally heard the terrified screams of the other students outside. "Fire! There's a fire! Call the emergency line. The mountain's on fire!" In the chaos, I saw Luis, his face pale as ash, rushing against the flow of people, heading straight for the flames. He was calling my name. At first just Freya, then Freya, and then, something I hadn't heard in so long, he called me wife. Luis looked wrecked, like a man on the edge, staring at the inferno. He tried to run in. Others held him back, shouting at him to stay calm. But just as he made to rush in, I called his name. My throat was scorched from the smoke. My voice was gone. He couldn't hear me. So Oliver called out for me. "Luis!" Luis turned. The first thing he saw was me, in Oliver's arms. The way Oliver held me, the way I leaned into him, that glance etched itself into forever. Luis clenched his fists. His eyes flooded with emotion. But it was too late. Even if fate had given him another shot, what difference would it make? From the moment he chose Veronica in the last life, our story had already begun to unravel. Life is long, but wounds from those closest to us cut deep. Even when they heal, the scars remain. The best way to hold on to love is to never hurt it in the first place. Never test the people you love, because humanity fails the test every time. Any girl who's been truly hurt will never go back. Luis opened his mouth, but no words came out. Then, finally, he smiled, a bitter, broken smile that grew louder and louder. It was like he was laughing at himself. "Luis," someone nearby called nervously. Luis said, "It's okay, she's safe." And then, he turned and walked away. Chapter 20. Thanks to the timely discovery, the fire caused no casualties. But once Dad learned that Oliver had been injured saving me, his leg crushed by a falling beam, he went straight to the hospital to visit him. I told Dad about some strange details from the night of the fire. Dad said, "Freya, I will give you an answer. In my previous life, Veronica had also been a student at a university. We were close, so I never suspected her. That's what gave her the opportunity to act in secret, to do things no one could trace back to her. But this time, she showed up suspiciously at the scene, and she had a grudge against me. Strong motive. With the direction of the investigation clear, the truth wasn't hard to uncover. No one blamed me anymore. It was obvious the fire hadn't been caused by my negligence. Sure enough, the investigation found clear signs of arson at the scene. Veronica was just one step away from being sent to prison. Dad told us to wait for good news. He would find the person who tried to hurt his daughter. And then, Luis turned himself in. He was prosecuted and sentenced. Before serving time, he requested to see me. I went. Luis said, "Freya, I wasn't the one who started the fire. I know. I thought long and hard about the fire, this life and the last. Looking back now, in our past life, the fire had started after Dad refused to let Luis be with me. He didn't think Luis could take care of me. So Veronica and Luis set the whole thing up to stage a rescue and win Dad over. Veronica drugged me and set the fire. Then Luis was supposed to come save me. Only, they didn't expect Oliver to get there first. Luis only arrived in time to carry me out at the last moment. In this life, Veronica still bore a grudge and tried again, this time out of pure revenge. But Luis wasn't part of it anymore. He came too late because he didn't even know it was going to happen. This time, I had finally found the person who truly saved me. Luis said, "I'm going to prison, for you. You didn't start the fire. If you choose to go to prison, what does that have to do with me?" He looked worn down, stubble on his chin, dark circles under his eyes. "Freya, you came back too, didn't you?" I feigned ignorance. Luis gave a miserable smile. "Whether you came back or not, I've lost you for good. But Freya, I never told you this properly before. I loved you. I was stupid. I didn't cherish what I had. And only after I lost it did I realize what it meant. You loved me so seriously. Through youth and adulthood, you gave me the best years of your life. And I failed you. I wasn't worthy. These past 2 years, I kept thinking, if I hadn't made those mistakes, would we have ended up differently? Could we have been happy?" He smiled bitterly. "A sweet wife. A wealthy home, it's every man's dream. And I had it all, but I didn't understand it. I put my pride above everything. Freya, do you know what I hated the most? When people called me a phoenix man, a man who only rose because of his wife's family. They said I only succeeded because of your father. But what about my effort? Who ever saw that? You gave me so much. Too much. You outshined me in every way. That's why I had to take your money. I had to prove something. I had to keep Veronica by my side. Only then did I feel like a real man." He looked down, eyes rimmed red. "But reliving it all, I realize how wrong I was. Over those 8 years, I fell for you completely. I was scared when you cried. Scared when you were hurt. When you frowned, my heart ached. But I realized all of this too late. Freya, this prison sentence is my punishment. My way of repaying you." He said in his last life, he'd made too many mistakes. And now, he didn't know how to make up for it. So, this was it. Chapter 21. When I left the detention center, I arrived just in time for Dad's family dinner. One way or another, the matter had finally come to an end. And by family dinner, I mean 3 people around one table, me, Dad, Oliver. Oliver sat across from me, smiling. He looked at me for so long that I had to lower my head and pretend to sip my water. Dad glanced between us, then burst out laughing. "You two look like a pair of fat worms, just squirming around with nothing better to do. Why don't you go take a walk?" I gawked at my dad. Did he really just say that about his daughter? Dad pulled me up. Go. Our garden was huge. Dad hired people to tend to the flowers and trees. Oliver had lived with us on and off over the past 2 years, so he and I both knew the garden well. There wasn't really a need to take a walk. But Oliver smiled and said, "Let's go." Thanks to Dad's relentless encouragement, the 2 of us ended up standing beneath the jacaranda tree in the yard. Oliver looked down at me and said that the night of the fire, he'd had a dream. In the dream, he saved me and died. At the moment he closed his eyes in exhaustion amid the flames. He made a wish in his heart. I hope my moonlight lives a happy life. If she isn't happy, then I want to give her happiness. Oliver said that when he opened his eyes, he saw the first light of dawn shining through his fingers, like he'd suddenly gained a whole new lifetime. Freya, you always wanted to know what 1310143 means, right? Come closer. I'll tell you, he replied. 13 is the number of letters in unforgettable. 10 is the number of letters in enchanting. 143 means I love you. It was the password he used for both his bank accounts, across 2 lives, and it was the love he never once dared to say out loud, but carried with him through time. Chapter 22, Oliver's Side Story. I dreamed of my whole life. I was born an illegitimate child. My mother met my father when she was 19. At first, she didn't know the truth. She thought she'd found true love, but later, she realized the man she loved most had lied to her, and she had become a homewrecker hated by all. It might not have been so shameful if she'd stopped there, but in the end, she forgave him and stayed in that relationship. Did she realize that by choosing to stay, she became an active participant in tearing apart another family? My father's wife loathed me as long as I was alive. I was a living reminder of her husband's betrayal. Even I thought my existence was filthy. So when people bullied me at school, I let them. I didn't want to fight back. I didn't have the strength to. The only person in that household who ever treated me kindly was my older brother. He used to say, "All of this is the adult's fault. It has nothing to do with us." He gave me pocket money when I was punished and not allowed to eat. He would secretly bring me food. But one day, he died because of me. He took me out to get some air, and we got into a car accident. A speeding truck came straight for us. He pushed me out of the way, but got dragged under the wheels himself. 1 minute we were laughing, and the next, he was crushed right in front of me, his body torn in half. Sometimes I thought, maybe if those bullies had just beaten me to death, that would have been better. Someone like me, born from filth, didn't deserve to live. Until that day, the girl I'd always dreamed of came to save me. I asked her, "Aren't you afraid I'll cling to you?" What did she say? I can't remember anymore. I only know that my moonlight was shining. She didn't know it, but in the darkest years of my life, she lit up my world. That day, someone blocked me and asked, "What can you possibly give her?" I thought, I'll give her everything. My life, my soul. So later, I threw myself into building a business. I worked like hell to grow stronger, just to stay by her side. Before and after, for the rest of my life, I held her in the softest part of my heart. Chapter 23, Louise's Side Story. After I got out of prison, I watched the wedding VCR of Freya and Oliver. In a sea of flowers, Freya was treated like a precious jewel in Oliver's hands, cherished, protected. The way he looked at her held no distractions, no deceit. But once, the man standing in that same flower field, kissing her under the sun, was me. Once, the person holding her at night as she slept, was me. I couldn't help myself. I went to the house where she now lived with Oliver. I stood at the corner of the street, watching. Oliver looked like a completely different man, refined, successful, a world apart from me. Freya and he had a daughter now, a sweet little girl. After they got out of the car, Oliver reached for her hand first, then lifted her up and let her ride on his shoulders. They were a perfect family. I accidentally made a noise. Freya looked up and saw me. She paused, just for a second. Then she turned away, as if I didn't exist. Her eyes didn't show forgiveness, and they didn't need to. It was like I'd become nothing more than air to her. I walked away, dazed. Passing a supermarket, I went inside and bought a pack of cigarettes. I took a few drags, and then made up my mind to find Veronica. But when I reached her building, I saw her hanging onto the arm of a man in his 50s. Veronica was glued to his beer belly. The man groped her waist, lewd, sleazy. When she saw me, her expression faltered. After the man left, she said, "Luis, I don't have any money. Don't come here again." She didn't even bother pretending anymore. I let out a cold laugh. Veronica bristled. "What are you laughing at? You think you're better than me? I don't need you or Freya. I'm doing just fine with other men now." And suddenly, I remembered myself at 18, working shitty part-time jobs just to buy Freya a gift. Life was hard back then, sure, But I never stooped. I never begged. I never tried to take a cent from her. And now? Veronica had no morals, no principles, destroying other people's families just for money. I looked at her, no longer the sweet, pitiful girl from high school, just someone weathered and worn, with nothing left to respect. I was overwhelmed with regret. I wanted to scream. How the hell did I destroy my life for someone like you?